Mafia boss was having dinner with his fiancée and in-laws until a waitress whispered, "Run now." The glass shattered first. An expensive crystal split clean in half as his grip tightened around it. Red wine poured like blood over the white tablecloth, spreading fast, too fast, like a warning no one else at that table understood. The room fell silent. His fiancée froze mid-laugh. Her father stopped cutting his steak. Her mother's hand hovered above her glass. The waitress leaned in close, pretending to clear the spill, and whispered the words that sliced the evening in half. "Run now. Where are you watching from tonight? And what time is it in your city right now?" Drop in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe because what's coming next is madness you won't believe. Stay till the end. You'll need to catch your breath after this one. He didn't move. He just stared at her, eyes like loaded guns, voice low enough to chill the entire room though it never rose above a whisper. "What did you say?" The waitress trembled. Her hand shook so badly the silver tray clattered against the table. The entire restaurant turned toward the sound, tension slicing through the soft piano music in the background. His fiancée looked between them, confused, reaching out for his arm. He brushed her hand off gently, too gently. That kind of calm was dangerous. He stood, slow and deliberate, adjusting the cuffs of his black suit. The tattoos on his neck flexed with every movement, serpents coiling beneath his skin. The waitress took a small step back. The man across the table, his fiancée's brother, swallowed hard and tried to make a joke, but no one laughed. He turned his head slightly toward the waitress, his tone smooth but heavy as a hammer. "Say it again." Her eyes darted toward the door, then back at him. "Please," she whispered, "please just go. They're coming." The words hit him like a thunderclap. He didn't need to ask who she meant. The world around him slowed. The clinking cutlery, the murmur of other guests, the flicker of candlelight reflecting off glass. And in that frozen second, his instincts screamed. He grabbed his fiancée by the wrist, eyes still locked on the waitress. "How long?" he hissed. She blinked, tears welling, and shook her head. "Maybe a minute, maybe less." He turned to the family at the table. "Everyone move. Now." They hesitated. Her father started to protest, until he saw the look on his face. That expression didn't belong to a businessman. It belonged to a man who'd survived every ambush that should have killed him. He pulled her from her chair and started toward the exit, his other hand sliding into his jacket for the cold steel resting there. The waitress stumbled after them. The lights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, an engine roared. The front door slammed open. Men in black masks spilled inside with weapons drawn. His blood went cold. "Get down," he barked, flipping the nearest table as cover. The sound of gunfire tore through the restaurant like thunder cracking marble. Screams filled the air. He shoved his fiancée to the floor and returned fire. Every movement precise, controlled chaos in human form. Glass shattered, plates exploded, and the elegant dining room became a war zone. Her mother crawled beneath the table, sobbing. Her brother tried to pull her to safety. The waitress screamed when a bullet grazed her shoulder. He kept shooting until the magazine clicked empty, then ducked, dragged his fiancée by the arm, and moved for the back door. The smell of gunpowder burned in the air. He could hear the thud of boots closing in, the orders shouted in languages his fiancée couldn't understand. She was shaking uncontrollably, trying to ask what was happening, but he couldn't answer. Not now. Not when every breath counted. He kicked the kitchen door open, shouting for his men. No response. His jaw clenched. He reached into his earpiece, static. Someone had jammed the signal. His fiancée stumbled, almost fell, but he caught her and pushed her toward the back exit. The waitress limped behind, blood staining her sleeve. He didn't even know her name, but she just saved his life. The alley behind the restaurant was slick from rain, neon light bouncing off the puddles. He scanned the rooftops. Nothing. No snipers. No cars. Too quiet. That wasn't right. He turned, motioned for them to stay put, and stepped into the open. The silence was heavy, the kind that warned him of betrayal. Then he saw it, the faint red that slid up the waitress's shoulder and stopped at her neck. Sniper. He lunged, dragging her down just as the bullet ripped through the air. It missed her by inches, splintering the brick wall behind them. He fired back twice, no hesitation, and the red dot vanished. But it was enough. Whoever was after him knew exactly where he was. He turned to his fiancée, her makeup streaked, her perfect life shattered in seconds. She was staring at him like she didn't recognize him. And maybe she didn't. The man she thought she was marrying wasn't the one standing before her. That man was dead long ago. She asked who they were. He didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed her chin, made her look him in the eyes, and said one word. Move. They ran. Down the alley, across the street, through the chaos of the city night. Tires screeched behind them. More gunfire. He pushed her into a side street, heart pounding. His mind was already 5 moves ahead, calculating escape routes, who could have sold him out, and why they'd chosen tonight, this dinner, this exact moment, to strike. They burst through a narrow passageway that opened into an abandoned garage. His lungs burned, but his instincts were alive, sharp as ever. He pulled her behind a concrete pillar and finally exhaled. She was trembling, clutching her chest, trying to catch her breath. He wanted to comfort her, but he couldn't. Not yet. He had to think. He checked his weapon. Empty. The waitress was pale, gripping her shoulder wound, whispering that she was sorry. He told her to stay quiet. He peered out through a broken window and saw black SUVs crawling along the street like predators. They were hunting him, and they weren't leaving until someone died. His fiancée finally spoke, voice breaking. What is this? Who are you really? He didn't answer. He just stared at her, eyes dark, expression unreadable. Somewhere deep inside, he wanted to tell her the truth. That the man she loved wasn't just a businessman. That his empire was built on blood and fear. But this wasn't the time. He reached for her hand, squeezed it hard. Stay close. Do exactly what I say. She nodded, terrified but trusting him anyway. Then from outside, they heard it. The sound of footsteps approaching fast, too many to count. He raised his gun again, though he had no bullets left. His jaw set like stone. If they wanted a war, he'd give them one. And as the headlights cut through the darkness, he turned to the waitress, eyes burning with one demand that shattered the silence. Tell me who sent them. She couldn't speak. Her lips trembled, her throat locked up, eyes darting between him and the shadows creeping closer through the garage windows. The waitress looked terrified beyond words, shaking her head as if saying it out loud would seal her death. He slammed his hand against the wall beside her head, the crack echoing through the space. She flinched and blurted out one name, Victor. The sound of that name hit him harder than any bullet could. His pulse spiked, his jaw tightened. Victor, the man he'd buried in the ruins of a warehouse 5 years ago. The man who was supposed to be dead. His mind raced. If Victor was alive, it meant everything he'd built, every secret deal, every ally he thought loyal, was compromised. His empire wasn't just under attack. It was bleeding from the inside. He turned toward the shadows, senses heightened, every nerve ready to snap. He motioned for his fiancée and the waitress to stay behind him. The footsteps grew louder, measured, confident. Whoever was coming wasn't afraid. That meant one thing. They believed they'd already won. Then the first flashbang rolled through the open doorway. The explosion was blinding, sound ripping through the air like a hurricane. He threw himself over his fiancée, shielding her from the blast. His ears rang, his vision blurred. But even half-deaf, he moved on instinct, grabbing the fallen pistol from a dead man's hand and firing into the chaos. Muzzles flashed. Shadows fell. Smoke filled the room. He didn't aim. He reacted. Years of survival had trained him to turn panic into precision. Every shot counted, but they kept coming. He ducked behind a car frame, pulling his fiancée down with him. She was crying now, silent tears streaking through the grime on her face. He pressed his hand against her cheek for a heartbeat, just one, then tore away and reloaded. The waitress crawled toward a corner, clutching her arm. She was pale, almost ghost-like, whispering that she didn't know Victor was still alive, that they forced her, that her family. He shut her up with a glare. No room for mercy. Not tonight. He knew betrayal when he saw it, even when it came dressed in fear. The sound of boots moved closer again, slower now. They were sweeping the place, certain he was cornered. He could hear them laughing, calling his name. They wanted him alive. That was the mistake. If they'd known what kind of man they were hunting, they'd have burned the building instead. He spotted a gas line running along the wall, half exposed. Perfect. He crouched low, tore a piece of cloth from his sleeve, and stuffed it into a bullet hole. One spark was all it would take. He whispered to his fiancée to crawl toward the side exit. She hesitated, shaking her head, pleading for him to come. He promised he'd follow, he lied. He waited. The first man stepped into the open. He pulled the trigger. The spark caught the leaking gas. The explosion ripped through the garage like the wrath of God. Flames surged upward, swallowing everything. Metal screamed, glass shattered, and bodies flew. He was thrown against a wall, the impact knocking the breath from his lungs. He stumbled up, coughing, blood dripping from his lip. The heat was unbearable, but he didn't stop. He grabbed his fiancée by the wrist, yanked her out the side door just as the roof collapsed behind them. The waitress didn't make it out. Her screams were lost in the roar of fire. He didn't look back. He couldn't. Outside, the night had turned violent. Sirens wailed in the distance. Civilians scattered like frightened birds. He pushed her through an alley, his mind running faster than his legs. Victor had people everywhere. Safe houses were compromised. Phones were useless. There was only one option left: disappear. She asked again who Victor was, voice trembling, trying to piece together the man she thought she knew with the one covered in blood beside her. He didn't answer. He couldn't give her that truth, not yet. All he said was that if she wanted to live, she'd stop asking questions. The way he said it made her fall silent instantly. They reached a dead end, brick wall, locked gate. He cursed under his breath, scanned for escape. He could hear engines approaching again. He turned, fired 2 shots into a padlock, kicked the gate open, and dragged her into a service corridor behind an old market. The stench was terrible, but it gave them cover. He leaned her against the wall. She was shaking violently, mascara streaked, her once perfect life shredded to ribbons. He tore his shirt, wrapped it around her bleeding arm from flying debris. His hands were rough, trembling slightly. He didn't show pain often, but the adrenaline was starting to burn out. The veins on his neck throbbed. He'd been in ambushes before, but never like this. This one was personal. Her voice cracked when she asked again who he really was. He looked at her for a long moment, the truth flickering behind his eyes like lightning in a storm. He told her his name, the real one, the one no one in her world had ever heard. Her face went pale. The name that filled newspapers, whispered in underworld circles, the ghost that made even crime lords tremble. She realized then the man she loved wasn't who she thought he was. Before she could speak, his phone buzzed once, an encrypted signal, the kind only one person could send. His right-hand man. The message was short. They got the wrong info. Victor's men are already at your house. His chest tightened. His family estate. His people. Everything he'd built. Gone if he didn't move now. He grabbed her hand again, forcing her to run. They burst out onto a main road, flagged down a car at gunpoint, and hijacked it. The driver didn't resist. He saw the blood, the fire, the madness in the man's eyes, and simply stepped out. He sped through the city, tires screaming against wet asphalt, heart pounding in sync with the roar of the engine. His fiancée sat frozen beside him, staring out the window as flashing lights painted the world red and blue. He told her to keep her head down. She obeyed, still in shock. He took a sharp turn, heading for the outskirts. Every turn of the wheel brought another wave of memories. How he'd trusted the wrong men. How he'd buried Victor himself. How impossible it should have been for him to still be alive. The rage in his chest burned hotter than the explosion behind them. They reached the cliffs overlooking the sea, the road vanishing into fog. He slammed the brakes, got out, and walked to the edge. The wind tore through his hair, rain lashing against his face. Behind him, she screamed for him to get back in the car, but he ignored her. He was trying to think. If Victor was alive, someone close had betrayed him, maybe even one of his own blood. The thought made his fists clench so hard they cracked. He took a breath, then turned back, motioned for her to get out. She refused. He walked up, opened her door, and pulled her gently but firmly to her feet. He told her that from this moment on, she was part of something she didn't understand. That if she stayed with him, there'd be no going back. Her voice broke when she said she didn't want this life. He nodded. Neither did I. He whispered, but they made me choose it. Before he could say more, a shot echoed from the distance. The car window shattered beside her head. He shoved her down and returned fire. Another car emerged from the fog, headlights blinding, bullets raining. He pushed her behind a rock and fired until the clip emptied again. The attackers closed in fast, engines roaring. He knew they wouldn't stop. He ran to the trunk, popped it open, and pulled out a duffel bag filled with weapons, his emergency cache. His fiancée stared at him like she'd fallen into a nightmare. He loaded 2 rifles, tossed one to her, and told her to shoot if she had to. She shook her head, terrified. He grabbed her chin again, eyes burning through hers. Do it, or we both die here. That snapped her. She raised the gun, trembling. The first car skidded to a halt. Men jumped out, shouting orders. He didn't wait. He opened fire, cutting them down one by one. The rain made the air electric, every bullet sparking off metal and stone. She screamed as one got too close, pulled the trigger without thinking, and watched a man drop. Her hands shook violently, tears spilling, but she'd done it. He looked back at her, saw the horror in her eyes, but also the spark, the survival instinct awakening. He didn't say a word, just reloaded and kept firing. The last man, standing, shouted something in Russian, then charged. He met him halfway, knife flashing. The fight was brutal, fast, animalistic. Blood sprayed, fists cracked, and when it was over, the man lay motionless at his feet. He stood over the body, chest heaving, rain washing the blood from his hands. His fiancée crawled toward him, shaking. He pulled her up, pressed his forehead against hers, both of them gasping in the storm. Somewhere in the distance, another explosion echoed his estate, his entire empire going up in flames. He didn't even look back. They were already coming for him again. And this time, he wasn't running. His body trembled from the adrenaline still ripping through his veins, rain mixing with the blood on his face as he stared at the orange glow in the distance, the estate burning. The flames stretched high, licking at the black sky like they wanted to drag heaven itself down into hell. Every piece of him wanted to go back, to save what was his, to tear apart whoever dared touch his home. But he knew better. That wasn't a fire he could put out with bullets. That was a message. And the message was clear. Victor was back. He shoved the rifle into the car, slammed the door, and turned to his fiancée. She stood frozen in shock, hair plastered to her face, mascara streaking down her cheeks, clutching the gun like it was the only thing keeping her upright. He grabbed her by the shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. She started shaking her head, saying she couldn't do this, couldn't be part of this life. He told her there was no more choosing. They'd already chosen for her when they tried to kill her. He pulled her into the car, gunned the engine, and tore off down the road, tires hissing on the wet asphalt. His mind was a storm. Memories, names, deals, betrayals. Everything blurred together. Victor, the one ghost he never wanted to face. He thought about the night he left Victor bleeding out in that warehouse, thought about the gunshot, the silence that followed, the way he'd walked away without looking back. Now the silence was gone. Now it screamed at him from every direction. She asked where they were going, voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer. He just drove. She asked again. He snapped, slamming his hand against the steering wheel, telling her he needed silence to think. She recoiled, tears falling harder, but stayed quiet. The guilt hit him immediately, but there was no time for softness. Not tonight. Not when every second mattered. He pulled off the highway, taking a dirt road through the forest. The car bounced violently, but he didn't care. He needed to vanish, needed a place no one would think to look. Eventually, he stopped at a half-collapsed cabin deep in the woods. It wasn't much, but would buy them time. He grabbed the duffel, checked the weapons, and ordered her to stay inside while he scouted the perimeter. She refused. She said she wasn't going to sit alone in the dark, not after what happened. He stared at her, jaw tight, but nodded. Fine. She could stay close. Just don't make a sound. He moved through the trees, senses sharp. Every crack of a twig made him twitch. He knew how Victor operated. He'd send scouts first, test his prey's nerves before the real hunt began. He crouched low, checked the tree lean, and that's when he saw it, a small blinking red light, almost invisible in the rain, attached to a tree trunk. Tracker. They'd already found his car. He cursed under his breath, yanked the device off, and crushed it under his boot. That meant they had minutes, maybe less. He ran back to the cabin, kicked the door open, told her to pack whatever she could find. She looked at him, terrified, asking how they found them so fast. He didn't answer. There wasn't time. As she scrambled to grab supplies, he heard the distant growl of engines again. Too soon. They were closer than he thought. He checked his ammo. Half a clip. Not enough. He looked around the cabin. Nothing useful but a hunting knife and a dusty bottle of kerosene. His eyes flicked toward the window. Maybe he didn't need to fight them all. Maybe he just needed to make the place explode. He doused the floor with the kerosene while she stared in disbelief. He told her they were leaving now, through the back. She started to argue, saying they couldn't just blow everything up. He didn't wait for her permission. He lit a rag, dropped it, grabbed her hand, and ran. The flames caught fast, swallowing the wooden walls like they'd been waiting for it. They bolted into the forest, smoke curling after them, the roar of fire growing louder. Then came the headlights. 2 trucks, armed men shouting, guns drawn. He dove behind a fallen log, pulling her down with him. She was crying again, whispering that she couldn't breathe. He covered her mouth gently, told her to hold still. One wrong breath and they were done. The men spread out, scanning the trees, flashlights cutting through the darkness. One of them passed, so close he could see the mud splattered on his boots. The firelight flickered off their guns. He waited, heartbeat pounding in his ears. Then one of them stepped into a trap, an old bear snare hidden under leaves. The metallic snap broke the silence. The man screamed. That was his cue. He stood up and fired, 3 shots clean and fast. 2 went down instantly. The rest turned, shouting orders, but he was already gone, pulling her deeper into the trees. Bullets sliced through branches, dirt spraying up around them. She tripped once, twice, but he dragged her up each time, refusing to let her fall. They ran until their lungs burned, until the forest gave way to a ravine. He stopped, chest heaving. Below them was a raging river, swollen from the rain. She shook her head, saying they couldn't. He looked back. The lights were getting closer. They didn't have a choice. He grabbed her hand tighter and jumped. The cold hit like knives. The current slammed them, spinning, dragging them under. He fought to surface, arms burning, trying to keep her above water. She screamed his name once before being pulled under again. He dove, grabbed her wrist, kicked with everything he had. The river didn't care. It wanted to take them both. Finally, they crashed against a boulder near the bank. He pulled her out, coughing, gasping, half-conscious. He checked her pulse. Weak but there. He pressed his forehead to hers for a moment, just long enough to feel her breath, before dragging her further inland. Hours passed before she woke. He had a small fire going now, using what little dry wood he could find. She stirred, eyes wide, whispering that she thought she was dead. He told her she almost was. Then he handed her a piece of cloth to dry off. His voice was softer now, the edge dulled by exhaustion. She asked again about Victor. Why was he doing this? Why come after them now? He looked at her for a long time, jaw clenching. He told her the truth this time. That Victor had been his brother, not by blood, but by something stronger. They built their empire together, survived wars, shared the same table, same enemies. But greed destroyed everything. Victor wanted it all, and when he couldn't have it, he tried to kill him. He thought he finished it that night in the warehouse. But now here they were. She stared at him, tears in her eyes. She said this would never stop, that Victor wouldn't quit until one of them was dead. He didn't argue. He just nodded. She asked what he was going to do. He said the only thing left to do, hunt the ghost that came back to life. Before dawn, they moved again. He scavenged clothes, stole a car from a roadside shack, and drove south. The plan was to get to an old contact, a weapons dealer who owed him favors. Every mile felt heavier. She sat beside him, silent now, clutching her jacket tight. She wasn't the same woman anymore. Fear had burned that version of her away. What was left was something harder, colder. They reached a small border town by morning. He parked in an alley and told her to wait in the car while he handled business. She refused. She said she was done waiting, done hiding. He stared at her for a second, then smirked. There was steel in her voice now. Fine. She could come. Inside the rundown bar, smoke and tension filled the air. He found his contact, a man named Pavel. The moment their eyes met, the room went still. Pavel looked nervous, too nervous. The wrong kind of nervous. He asked where the guns were. Pavel hesitated. That was all he needed to know. He drew his weapon in one swift motion, pressing it against Pavel's throat. Pavel cracked instantly, spilling everything. Victor had already been here. He'd offered double the money, double the power. He bought everyone. The rage that filled his chest was volcanic. He wanted to pull the trigger right there, but he needed Pavel alive. He told him to deliver a message. Tell Victor I'm coming. Tell him I'm done running. He grabbed his fiancée's hand and stormed out. Outside, the air felt electric again. War was coming, and he could feel it in his bones. She looked at him, asking what now. He turned, eyes dark, voice steady. Now we burn his world to the ground. He didn't wait for her response. He slammed the car, door shut, engine roaring like a beast waking from its cage. The fire in his veins was back, hotter than before. The world outside blurred into streaks of gray and red as he drove through the border town, every corner of his mind already plotting Victor's downfall. The woman beside him, once trembling and unsure, now sat silent, a storm brewing behind her eyes. She didn't ask where they were going this time. She didn't need to. Wherever this road led, she knew there was no turning back. He reached into the glove compartment, pulled out a burner phone, and smashed it against the dashboard. Too many eyes, too many ears. Everything had to be clean. He told her to do the same with hers. She hesitated for half a second, then threw her phone out the window without a word. He gave a tight nod. She was learning. The rain started again, hard and fast. He could barely see through the windshield, but it didn't matter. His mind was sharper now, focused. Every thought pointed at one target. Victor, the man who refused to die. The man who took everything he built and twisted it into something monstrous. He gripped the steering wheel tighter. If Victor wanted a war, he'd get one. But it wouldn't be a war of guns. It would be precision. Pain. A message carved into bone. After hours of driving, he pulled into an abandoned motel off the highway. The neon sign flickered, half dead. Perfect. They checked in under fake names, just two travelers escaping the rain. Inside the room, she paced while he spread blueprints and weapons across the bed. He had maps of Victor's known routes, stash houses, and lieutenants. Years ago, he designed those routes himself. Every weak point, every fallback plan, it was all his design. And now he'd use it against him. She stopped pacing, watching him load his gun. She told him she wanted to help. He laughed, short, humorless. She said she wasn't asking for permission. He turned to her, eyes cold, saying this wasn't her fight. She took a step closer, her voice cracking but fierce, saying it became her fight the moment Victor burned their home. The words hit him harder than bullets. He stared at her for a long time before tossing her a smaller handgun. She caught it awkwardly, hands trembling, but he saw something in her face, a fire that matched his own. They didn't sleep that night. He spent hours wiring the car with traps, cleaning weapons, memorizing routes. She sat beside him, asking questions, learning fast. By dawn, she was loading magazines like she'd done it all her life. When the sun finally crept over the horizon, he told her this was it, the beginning of the end. She nodded once, no hesitation. The first stop was a warehouse near the docks. It used to be one of Victor's smaller outposts, a smuggling checkpoint. He'd heard it was now a distribution center for weapons and cash, fuel for Victor's army. As they approached, he could already see movement, armed guards patrolling. He told her to stay low and wait for his signal. She didn't argue. He slipped into the shadows, silent, fast, a ghost among steel and smoke. Two guards stood by the entrance, laughing about something. He was behind them before they even realized. 2 hits, quick, brutal. They dropped without a sound. He dragged them out of sight, took one of their radios, and slipped inside. The smell of oil and gunpowder filled the air. Crates stacked high, trucks loaded with cash, men shouting orders. He counted at least a dozen. He smirked. Good. More witnesses. He moved fast, planting small charges along the walls. Each one a promise. When he finished, he stepped out from behind a truck and fired into the air. Chaos erupted instantly. Men scrambled for cover, shouting his name like a curse. He didn't hide. He wanted them to see him. He wanted word to reach Victor that his ghost had come back to life. The gunfight was pure madness. Bullets tore through crates, glass shattered, bodies dropped. She joined from outside, covering his flank like she'd been doing it for years. Every time he moved, she followed his rhythm perfectly, 2 shots cover move. When the last man fell, he detonated the charges. The explosion ripped through the night, sending a wall of fire into the sky. He stood there, watching it burn, breathing heavy, adrenaline singing in his blood. She came up beside him, hands still shaking, but her smile was wild, fearless. He told her this was just the beginning. Victor would hear about it within the hour, and when he did, he'd strike back harder. That was exactly what he wanted. By nightfall, news of the explosion had already spread. He could feel the heat of the hunt turning toward him. Every old contact, every ally he thought he'd lost, phones were ringing again. Some wanted in, some wanted him dead. The underworld was awake now. They stopped at a gas station off the main road to regroup. She stayed in the car while he went inside. As he paid for supplies, he caught sight of a TV in the corner. The screen showed grainy footage of the explosion. Then Victor's face appeared, calm, collected, eyes like a serpent. He was giving a statement, pretending to be some philanthropist talking about reconstruction efforts. Lies so polished they could shine. The sight made his fists clench. He walked out without saying a word, hands trembling from rage. She asked what was wrong, but he didn't answer. He just drove, faster, harder. The road ahead was a blur. Then the headlights appeared, black SUVs in the mirror. Too close, too synchronized. He cursed under his breath and told her to get ready. The SUVs accelerated. The first shots came fast, shattering the rear window. She screamed but kept her gun steady. He swerved, tires screeching, returning fire through the broken glass. Sparks flew as bullets ricocheted off metal. They were being boxed in. 3 cars now, 1 in front, 2 behind. He yanked the handbrake, spinning the car sideways, slamming into one of the SUVs. The impact sent it flipping into a ditch. The others tried to surround them, but he floored the accelerator, ramming straight through. The sound of crunching steel echoed through the air. One SUV burst into flames. They made it out barely, smoke trailing from their engine. He turned off the main road, weaving through side streets until they lost sight of the pursuers. She sat there, panting, staring at him like he was something she couldn't fully understand. He was bleeding again, from his arm, his neck, but he didn't care. Pain didn't matter anymore. Only the mission did. They pulled into another safe house, an old mechanic's garage he once used for deals. Inside, he collapsed into a chair, breathing hard. She rushed to patch him up, hands shaking but determined. He didn't stop her. For the first time in a long time, he let someone else help. When she finished, he grabbed her hand and told her the truth, the full truth this time. He told her about Victor's plan, how he'd been building something bigger than money or power, a network that reached politicians, police, even military officers, a shadow government. Victor wasn't just coming for revenge. He was coming for control. Her face went pale, but she didn't back down. She asked what they could possibly do against that kind of power. He looked at her with that cold, unshakable calm that had once made entire rooms go silent. He said they'd take it apart piece by piece, one betrayal at a time. That night, they made a list. Every name that had switched sides. Every contact who fed Victor intel. Every rat in his old empire. When they were done, there were 14 names. 14 people who thought they were safe. He looked at the list and said one thing. None of them will see sunrise. She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. There was no fear left in her. Only resolve. He wiped the blood off his face, loaded his gun, and looked out the cracked window into the night. Somewhere out there, Victor was smiling, thinking he was still in control. But he wasn't. Not anymore. The war had already begun, And this time, there would be no mercy, no negotiations, no forgiveness. He turned to her, eyes burning, voice low and certain. Tomorrow, we start the hunt. The night bled into morning, and the city woke trembling. Word spread fast. Every underworld ear heard the whisper before sunrise. The ghost had returned, and he wasn't hunting quietly anymore. 14 names, 14 marks. The woman beside him, no longer the trembling waitress from that dinner, now wore the cold determination of someone who had lost everything and refused to lose again. Together, they were a storm, moving through the city like vengeance itself. The first target was easy. A club owner, one of Victor's informants, living like a king off blood money. The boss didn't bother sneaking in. He walked straight through the front door, eyes cutting through the noise and the neon. The guards recognized him too late. Gunfire split the music, panic spread, and by the time silence returned, the club reeked of fear and smoke. The woman followed him out, her clothes dusted with the night's chaos. She didn't flinch anymore. She didn't even look back. The next two fell before noon. A crooked banker found slumped behind his desk, phone still in hand. A police captain ambushed in his car, his last breath whispering the name he betrayed. Each hit was a message written in blood. Victor's network was collapsing, and every betrayal had a cost. The news stations called it gang retaliation. The streets called it justice. By the third day, the city had gone quiet. Too quiet. Even the rats were hiding now. Every step they took was heavier, closer to the center of it all. The final names led to the docks, to a cargo ship owned by one of Victor's shell companies. It was supposed to be an armed shipment, but they both knew better. It was a trap. He told her that before they moved in. She didn't care. She said she was tired of running. He looked at her and saw it. She wasn't his accomplice anymore. She was his equal. The ship loomed against the gray horizon, engines humming. He slipped through the shadows. She covered the rear, both moving like they'd rehearsed it 1,000 times. But before they reached the main deck, lights exploded across the dock. Spotlights, voices, footsteps. Surrounded. Dozens of Victor's men, rifles aimed, waiting. And in the middle of them, Victor himself, smiling like the devil had come home. The boss stood tall, calm. His eyes locked on Victor's. Years of betrayal burned between them like gasoline. Victor laughed, said something about loyalty being a weakness. The boss took a slow step forward, ignoring the guns trained on him. He told Victor he'd built him once, and now he'd unmake him. Victor raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the woman moved. She came out of the shadows, firing fast and precise. Chaos erupted. Bullets tore through the air. Men fell like dominoes, the sound of vengeance echoing across the docks. The boss charged through the confusion, tackling Victor into the side of the ship. They struggled, fists in fury, years of hate crashing in every blow. Victor fought dirty, pulling a knife, slashing across his shoulder. The pain was white-hot, but the boss didn't stop. He drove his knee into Victor's chest, grabbed the knife, and turned it back on him. The blade met flesh, and Victor's grin vanished. He gasped, eyes wide, disbelief frozen on his face. The boss leaned close, whispering something only Victor could hear before letting him fall. The dock went silent again, except for the waves hitting metal and the sound of her breathing beside him. She stared at him, shaking, gun still raised. He told her it was over, but she didn't believe it, because for people like them, it was never really over. The cost of survival was too high. She said his name softly, asking what came next. He looked at her, eyes hollow but alive, and said they'd disappear. Burn it all. Start clean. Together, they torched the ship. Flames roared, painting the sky orange. Everything Victor built turned to ash before dawn. They stood side by side, watching the fire devour the past. The boss said nothing. She reached for his hand, and this time, he didn't pull away. When morning came, the city whispered again. The Mafia boss was gone. So was the woman who helped him. No bodies, no traces, just silence and smoke. Some said they died in the fire. Others said they left the country, new names, new lives. But in every dark corner, every deal made in shadow, one rule became legend. Never cross the ghost who walked away from the flames. Because justice in his world wasn't about law. It was personal, and it always came collecting. When revenge burns hotter than fear, even the most powerful fall. In a world ruled by blood and betrayal, love became both weapon and salvation. By dawn, they vanished into silence, but their story lingered, a reminder that every empire built on lies eventually meets its fire. If this story gripped you, smash that subscribe button, tell us where you're watching from, drop a comment, and share it. Another wild Mafia tale drops soon.